Hello, everyone. We're just letting people in. Give us a couple of minutes.
Oh, that's a pretty bad.
Just going to give it a couple of more minutes, folks, and then we're going to get started. I just got a message in our chat box that says that folks are not hearing me. So I'm just checking and testing to make sure. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Perfect. I just hadn't been speaking. So we're just going to give it one more minute and then we're going to get started as folks are still coming in. Perfect. Okay, I think we're going to get started. It's 2:04 on my time right now. So we're going to get started because we have a lot to go through. So first things first, the work of the Canadian Women's Foundation and that of the programs we support takes place on traditional First Nations, Métis, and Inuit territories. I am personally joining you from the traditional lands of the Anishinaabewake, the Wendake, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississauga, and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet and work and live on this land. If you are interested in knowing the traditional lands where you work, meet, and live, you can check out our link, nativeland.ca, our home on native land, that is now being posted in the chat box. However, we recognize that land acknowledgements are not enough. We need to pursue truth, reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship in an ongoing effort to make right with all our relations. However, if you don't know us, by the way, the Canadian Women's Foundation is a national leader in the movement for gender equality in Canada. Through funding, research, advocacy, and knowledge sharing, we work to achieve systemic change. We support women, girls, and gender diverse people to move out of violence, out of poverty, and into confidence and leadership. Since 1991, our partners and donors have contributed more than $150 million to fund over 2,500 life-transforming programs throughout the country. Some technical details. If you haven't already, please click the interpretation option. It's the little tiny globe at the bottom of your screen and select a language channel. We do have our interpreters working today, thank you Saren and Audrey, to make sure everyone's words are translated. So please now select either English or French from the options to ensure a seamless experience for you. If you have questions, please type them into the Q&A box during the webinar. We will monitor this box and pose your questions at the end of the webinar, doing our best to get to as many as we possibly can. If you are having any tech issues, please feel free to pop a note into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will do our best to assist you. Finally, at the end of the webinar, there will be a survey available. If you can, please take the time to give your feedback. Okay, Liz, if you can share your screen for the PowerPoint. I will say, folks, that I have some weather on my end, so I am going to turn off my video to ensure that there is no drop in service. So I haven't just disappeared, but I'm doing it strategically to make sure that I don't drop from this call. So I am turning my video off now. All right, so this webinar is intended to provide you with more information about the Foundation's Community Needs Grants and help you prepare to write your proposal. About the team here today, my name is Rivka Kalalia, and I'm the Grants Coordinator at the Foundation, responsible for supporting the work on the Community Needs Grant and several other grant streams. Today, we also have Violet, another grants coordinator, Liz and Melissa, our tireless capacity building coordinators, and last but not least, Ann Dector, our senior director at the Foundation, supporting work on community needs and emerging and urgent issue grants, as well as policy work. I will try not to speak too quickly. If I do, please do type it into the chat or question box, and I will slow down. We will keep all questions for the end of the webinar, but you can type these in the question box at any time. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and the contents of the presentation will be made available in our YouTube channel. In the chat now, you will find the links to the English and to the French PowerPoint presentation for your use. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the Community Needs Grants. This is a single-year funding aimed at providing short-term, flexible support to organizations offering programs and services that align with one of the Foundation's 3 pillars. More on that in just a moment. Some examples of the types of activities that might be funded, sorry, give me one second, are to supplement a funding gap for existing operational, administrative, or program costs, to pilot projects or support program development, to adapt existing service offerings using new technology or approaches and support staff accordingly, and to reinforce the work of coalitions and service coordination or advocacy work. Next slide, please. Now, to be deemed eligible for a community needs grant, you must demonstrate that your proposal meets the following criteria. Charitable status or qualified donees. Applicants must be incorporated, an incorporated nonprofit organization and have a charitable number or be a First Nations band designated as a qualified donee by Canadian Revenue Agency. If your organization does not have charitable status or is not a qualified donee, we can consider an application in partnership with another organization that is a registered charity or qualified donee with a mandate that's relevant to your proposal. The other organization's board of directors will have fiscal responsibility for the grant and be legally responsible for ensuring that the funds are spent for the charitable purposes intended. They will be required to sign the funding agreement and work in partnership with delivering the project. One of the other criteria that is really important, gender-based programming, services and/or advocacy are core or central to your organization's mission, and you have significant experience working with and for women, girls, two-spirit, trans, non-binary people who face multiple barriers and are underserved, including First Nation, Métis, and Inuit, Black people, 2S LGBTQI+, those living with disabilities, those living in rural, remote, or northern communities, racialized people, refugee, immigrant, or non-status, those living on low incomes, older or seniors, and youth. Your organization also must be a grassroots with a small budget. And that is defined as organizations with an operating budget of less than 1 million per year, or shelters and transitional houses with an operating budget of less than 2 million per year. Please do note that larger organizations, example band councils, shared platforms, or hamlets, may present an application on behalf of a nonprofit organization without charitable or qualified donee status. And then the other final kind of main criteria is alignment with the foundation's funding pillars. I did see a question that said, are we behind on the slides? We're not. I'm just going into a little bit more detail about the community needs grants. So alignment with the foundation's funding pillars, the proposed funding will support your organization's ability to provide programs, services, and or advocacy initiatives, either directly or through funding program or service costs, or indirectly through funding core operational costs that align with one or more of the foundation's funding pillars. The first one is gender-based violence, and those are organizations that support women, Two-Spirit, trans, and non-binary people and their children who have experienced violence or that work towards violence prevention with teens of all genders. The second is economic security, and those are organizations that aim to improve employability and economic possibilities for women, Two-Spirit, trans, and non-binary people living with low income or who are unemployed or underemployed. Please note that proposals for programs or services solely aimed at poverty alleviation or providing direct financial support will not be considered for this funding. And finally, girls empowerment. And those are organizations that support girls, Two-Spirit, trans, and non-binary youth aged 9 to 13 years through regular group activities in girls-only settings that empower and build a sense of belonging amongst participants. Next slide, please. So there are some additional considerations and priorities for this grant. The community needs grants are highly competitive, and priority will be given to proposals that demonstrate the following. Organizations led by and or serving populations that face multiple barriers and are underserved, including First Nation, Métis, and Inuit women, girls, Two-Spirit, trans, and or non-binary people, Black women, girls, Two-Spirit, trans, and or non-binary people, women, girls, Two-Spirit, trans, and or non-binary people with disabilities, Two-Spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, questioning, intersex, pansexual, androgynous, and asexual people, but also organizations that apply a feminist, intersectional, trans, inclusive, and sex work positive analysis to its organizational structure and activities, understands the intersection of inequity and barriers to participation such as race, class, gender, and sexual identity or orientation, ability or disability, immigration, Indigenous status, language, occupation, such as sex work and or geography, uses an asset-based positive approach that centers clients' knowledge and experiences, considers the realities of participants' lives. So for example, by providing free services, childcare, transportation assistance, mental health or counseling supports, accessibility measures, or advocacy to enable access to service or programs, has established partnerships with other local or community-based organizations that have experience working with women, girls, Two-Spirit, trans, and non-binary people, that communicates clearly how funding will be used to support the organization's capacity to serve women, girls, Two-Spirit, trans, and or non-binary people in their community, and presents a clear and balanced budget. Next slide, please. Please note that we will accept only one proposal per organizations, again, across all the streams. So as an organization, you can only present one proposal. It doesn't matter if you're going under gender-based violence or economic or girls. You can't present one under each. If you apply for a community needs grant, however, you are still eligible to apply for other funding streams at the foundation, other grants, though not for the same initiative. It does have to be for a different initiative. And just as an FYI, the foundation does not fund the same initiative more than 3 times under any of our annual grant streams. And when we say annual grant, we mean the community needs grant. Next slide, please. Please do keep in mind what we do not fund, and those are individuals, federal or provincial or municipal government agencies and school boards, for-profit organizations or businesses, fundraising events, conferences, festivals, seminars, and symposiums, activities outside of Canada, activities not solely or primarily focused on women, girls, two-spirit, trans, and non-binary people, deficit funding, films or videos, unless this is part of a larger project, capital campaigns or expenditures, academic or university research, or self-defense training if it's the only component of the project. Next slide, please. When considering everything, we do ask you to keep an eye on the timeline for this process. Please note that the due date is Friday, February 16th of this year at 4 p.m. Eastern. And then from February 16th, from that date to April, we will review and shortlist our applications so that in May, we are able to send the list to the Grant Selection Committee for final selections, who will then have a recommendation list ready to go to our board for approval in June of this year. And then at the end of June of this year, all applicants will be notified about the decisions, with the grant being awarded at the end in July 2024. Next slide, please. So before you start the application, we do ask that you review the grant guidelines, the application instructions, and the frequently asked questions. On the slide, you'll notice these 2 links that will take you to the English and to the French landing page for the Community Needs Grant on our website. Please note the grant guidelines will provide an overview of the granting criteria, the eligibility, and the timelines. And the instructions provide tips on how to fill out the online application. Next slide, please. So getting started with our online application platform, please note that when you go to our website, there will be 2 links at the top of the page. One link is to begin your application, and the second link is to be used to sign back in once you've opened a new application. So when you click the register button on the main Community Needs Grant page of the Foundation's website, you will open basically an application. Once you have signed in, you will get an automatic message confirming, and you will be able to sign in with that email and password to continue at any point. Please note, if you have used our online platform before, you would continue to use the same login credentials. Now, you can return to what's called My Account page at a later date using the same login credentials to start or continue working on your application, which we'll look at in a moment. And that link is the second one that you can find on the Community Needs Grant page of the Foundation's website. Next slide, please. Once you sign in from the registration link, you will be prompted to complete the eligibility form. There are 4 questions in all that you will have to answer in succession. Please note this is different from last year. Last year, all 4 questions were on the same page. This year, you will have to answer each question, and then it will move you to the next question. So there is that change we wanted to highlight for you. If you do answer no to any of these, you will get an email saying you aren't eligible, and it will not push you through to the application form. It will provide you with a contact name, so please reach out and we will help you to resolve any issues. And please do contact us if you have questions or if you have made a mistake, as we may be able to fix it for you and move you along in the application. Next slide, please. So if you sign in using the My Account link, which is the second link you see at the top of the landing page for the Community Needs Grant, when you return to work on your application at a later time, you click that link. You will then click on the application name, in this case, Community Needs Grant 2024 application. Some additional buttons highlighted for you. There are 4. So there's the first one, which I think it's 2 torsos with arrows between them. You can transfer to a new owner. So it can be transferred to someone else to review if you should so wish to do so. The second one is manage viewers, and that gives access to folks to be able to see the application, but not do any, like they won't be able to input anything into it. And that's the big eyeball. And then there's the delete, which is the trash bin. And then the last icon is the icon where you can email yourself a copy, and that way you can also share that with other folks in your office or in your organization. Next slide, please. So the online application form itself, once you've opened your application, you will note a few tabs at the top of the page. Those are the red and the purple boxes that you see. You can click on any tab you'd like to jump to the part of the proposal you want to work on in that moment. The first tab includes questions primarily related to you and your partner organization, if that's applicable. The second tab includes questions related to the proposed activities that you are seeking funding for. And the third tab is for you to upload your supporting documents, and it is where you can access the budget form template. Now, please note that some supporting documents will be required from your organizational partner if that is applicable. And the final tab allows you to review and submit your application. Please do read the proposal questions instructions. The link is on the page. It's also on the website. So there's links that you can click into it at any time. And please note that most fields are mandatory, and those are denoted by the red star next to the field. You can print or email yourself a draft at any point, which we do recommend, as well as push save and finish later at the bottom of every page. We do also recommend that you have someone else review your answers before you hit submit. Next slide, please. So some things to note about supporting documents. All documents should be in PDF format, including the budget form. And when you save that budget form from Excel into PDF, please do make sure that you have saved it in a single page view so that you don't get chopped up into several pages. Each field will only allow for one document to be uploaded. If you want to upload more than one letter of support, you will need to merge these into one PDF document. There is also an additional documents field for any materials you want to attach in support of your proposal. If you are working with an organizational partner, the audited financial statements and anti-racism policies for both organizations must be submitted. There is a field for each organization to upload these documents. To upload documents, you will click on Choose File to select the file from your computer or drive that you want to upload. Once you have selected this, you will then need to click on the Upload button immediately below it for it to be attached to the application. Next slide, please. Reviewing and submitting an application. If you click the Review My Application tab, any missing fields or errors will be highlighted to you. You must fix these before you can submit. Literally, the system will not allow you to submit your application until you have resolved all of the things that are highlighted in red on this page, for example. Next slide, please. So we want you to stand out with a strong proposal. So here's what we ask you to do. Make it easy for us. Answer questions clearly, intentionally, completely. Simple language is best. Submit a complete, organized, and clear application package. Read and reread all of your answers. Don't rush it. Give yourself time to pull together all the supplementary documents you need to submit, and give yourself time to think and write. Our staff has spent a significant amount of time drafting the guidelines, instructions, and frequently asked questions. Please, please review them. You will note the assigned word limits for each question. While these are intentionally limited, we do recommend that you use as much of the allotted limit as possible. 1 to 2 sentence answers simply do not provide sufficient detail for the committee's consideration. A best practice we do recommend: when drafting and crafting your answers, work offline on a Word document so you do not run into any issues with the system timing out or dropping if your service is dropped. An issue sometimes, as the online application platform is cloud-based. All questions are provided in the application instruction document so that you can work offline. Next slide, please. And continuing to stand out with a strong proposal, know your audience. Learn about the foundation's funding priorities. State your goals clearly and the steps you will take to achieve those goals. Highlight your organization's experience and expertise in doing gender-based work, and demonstrate that your proposed work is founded on a history of success in addressing gender equality. While you may have been funded or otherwise be known to the foundation, please don't assume we know your work. A committee of volunteers will be reviewing the applications, and they may not be as familiar with your work. Be explicit in stating your organization's approach and previous experience with the proposed community and with delivering gender-based programming. The need for the funding, noting why this work is important to your organization or community now, and why this specific intervention or action is needed. Please refrain from using this section to outline research or statistics from external sources that speak to an issue more broadly. The foundation is aware why GBV services are needed. And finally, how the funds will be used to advance your work in meeting the noted need. Next slide, please. So, how do you stand out, not wipe out? Proposals that do not fit into the mandate of the foundation or the call for proposals, recycled proposals that have not been updated, incomplete applications or applications exceeding the recommended length, and applications sent after the deadline. If for any reason you are struggling to submit the application by the deadline of February 16th, if there are outstanding documents, if you are, for instance, working with an organizational partner, please reach out to us and let us know before the deadline. We are able to accommodate, but as long as you reach out to us before the deadline happens. As not all organizations are working with an organizational partner, it is possible to submit without answering the questions pertaining to an organizational partner. However, if you do not have a charitable number and are working with an organizational partner, any of those questions being blank would count as an incomplete application. Next slide, please. The community needs grants are made possible by the following generous donors to the Canadian Women's Foundation: Women and Gender Equality Canada, the Slate Family Foundation, Capital One, and our many other corporate partners, individual donors, and private family foundations throughout the country. And we thank them for their support. Next and final slide, I believe. So, questions. If you have questions, please reach out. Again, my name is Rivka Kalia. I'm the grants coordinator. You can reach me at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org. My phone number is 416-365-1444, extension 223. There, you also will note the 1866 number. If you are experiencing any technical issues or questions that you have in French, please do email citech@canadianwomen.org. That inbox is monitored daily, and we will be able to help you there. That, my friends, is the end of our presentation. So I would like to now open it up for questions, and I see that we have 26 questions. So I'm going to start at the top and make my way down. First question we have from Jenny is, do you have a list of past recipients? And if you have applied and previously won this award, can you reapply with the same project? So if you go to our website and you go to our work, there is a listing of previous recipients for the community needs grants, as well as all of our other grants. So you can see a list or a sampling, a selection of what we have funded in the past. And if you have applied and previously won this grant, can you reapply with the same project? Yes. Note and remember that we will not fund the same project more than 3 times in community needs. But if it's like once or twice, we will fund it 3 times, but no more than that. The next question I have is a cultural organization working with low-income women eligible, even if the mission is primarily cultural? So our recommendation for organizations that don't have women as their primary audience, as the organization itself, if you were to provide information about an organization that you're partnering with that can provide that expertise and that guidance, we will accept the application. But working with low-income women is allowable under our economic development grant stream for community needs. Just please highlight your support and work with an organization that does have that experience working in gender-based programming. Can the grant fund a needs assessment which would involve the community we serve, sorry. For this one, I think I am going to throw that question to Ann Decter if I can. I believe it's allowable under our funding, but just looking for backup about this, Anne, if at all possible, please.
Yeah, that's definitely eligible.
Perfect. There we go. So it's eligible. But please do articulate the need for that in your proposal. The next question I have is, as a newly incorporated nonprofit organization providing a population-focused population, Black newcomers, with specific programs for women, are we eligible? Yes. Incorporated nonprofit, yes. You will have to apply with an organization that does have charitable status. So you are eligible if you can apply with a trustee, yes. The board is mandated to have a majority of women, and gender equality is a mandate. Is that sufficient? That would be sufficient under our criteria, eligibility criteria. Our grants requests for Law 25, protection of personal information, eligible. Emily, I think that would have, it depends on the project. It depends on what you're asking for. I am going to encourage you, Emily, to reach out to me separately so we can kind of talk about what you're looking to fund. I just need a little bit more information, and that would require a separate conversation. So please do reach out at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org, and we can talk about that later separately. If our proposal is for supporting old seniors, can men be part of the group? So part of our eligibility criteria is a focus on women and non-binary people. Can men be part of the group? You would have to articulate why that would be necessary, but understand the priority for us is given to organizations that primarily focus on women, girls, Two-spirit, trans, and non-binary people. So that is part, like that would be a priority would be given to those organizations. For the criteria around yearly revenue, which fiscal year are you taking into account? I would believe it would be your most recent one. If there's been an increase or a dip, I can understand why you'd ask that question, but it would, when we ask for audited financial statements and reports of that kind, we are asking for the most recent, so it would be your most recent fiscal year. Now that the CRA has released guidance on grants to non-qualified donee, is there any plan to change the requirements that fundees be a charity? There are only 38 charities in Nunavut, so this is a big barrier for Northern organizations. Sorry, I'm just reading that over. Now that the CRA has released the guidance on grants to non-qualified donees, is there any plan to change the requirements that fundees be a charity? There are only 38 charities in Nunavut out of 250 plus NPOs, so this is a big barrier for Northern organizations. Jesse, if we can have an offline discussion about that, if they're a nonprofit up north and you're struggling to find, I'm assuming the question is about struggling to find, excuse me, a charity or someone to serve as your fiscal sponsor. Happy to have a separate conversation about the reality of that and what that looks like for you in applying for this funding. So please, again, if you can reach out to me at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org, we can have a conversation about that. We try to be as flexible as possible, especially for organizations that are in remote and northern locations that might struggle with finding an organization that can serve as their fiscal sponsor. Please do always just reach out to us to see what is workable. Does this mean we cannot apply on our own and offer support to grassroots organization without a charitable number? So at minimum, to apply for our funding, unfortunately, because of the way that we are structured, you do have to have at minimum nonprofit status. And if you only have nonprofit status, you do have to partner with an organization that does either have charitable status or qualified donee status. That unfortunately is the reality of how we are able to fund. I don't know if there's other mitigating information about this. So again, Julian, if you want to reach out to me separately at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org, the email is in the chat. Please do so. But unfortunately, yes, at minimum, you have to have nonprofit status. And if you only have nonprofit status, you do have to partner with an organization that has charitable or qualified donee status.
Riff?
Yeah.
I think it's possible that Julian's asking the opposite question. Can they put in an application for their own work? It's that they have charitable status. Can they put an application in for their own work and then
and
also be
support
an
other
organizational?
So the challenge is if you are serving, so if you put in work for an application for yourself, for your organization, and are serving as a fiscal sponsor, what that means is if both applications are shortlisted, we would have to tell the nonprofit that you are serving as their fiscal sponsor that they would have to find another fiscal sponsor. So that is a challenge, and we don't want to disrupt their work and their ability to apply. So although technically you could, we would not recommend it, because if you both were to move forward, automatically we would have to move your work forward, and we would have to inform the organization that needs a fiscal sponsor to find another fiscal sponsor. But again, give me a call afterwards and we can talk about what that reality looks like. Can you talk a little bit more about the requirement that gender-based programming services needs to be at the core to the organization's mission? What if an organization serves a variety of populations, including women, and wants to increase their gender-based programming? So again, for us, it's all about priorities. The reality is when we say that the community needs grant is competitive, when we say competitive, we mean last year we received 350 applications for 24 grants. So if it comes down to an organization that doesn't primarily have gender-based programming and services versus an organization that does, our priority would be for the organization that has gender-based programming as a primary focus. So it's not that we're saying you shouldn't apply, but understand that those are our priorities. And if you're looking to increase your gender-based programming, we will take a look at that application, but understanding our priorities, if it comes down to that, the reality is we will side with the organizations that fit our priorities and our focus areas. What are your other options if you do not have an audited financial statement? So there's several options. Your financial report that you would submit to your board, we would take a look at that. I don't know what you do and don't produce, but there are other options besides audited financial statements. So we can take a look at those. But basically, it would be any financial report that you submit to the leadership or to your board of directors or to anyone who oversees that aspect of your work. We would accept those. Please do reach out separately and let me know what you do have available, and we can tell you if it is eligible or not. Our next question. For the budget template left at the portal, we are not able to add more rows to include more activities. What is your recommendation? So we've heard this time and time again. So if you are, it would depend on what type of activities you are looking to add. So for a review of your budget, please do reach out, Carla. And we can talk about how you can amalgamate some of the activities into one. I know that some of them only have like 3 or 2 lines for the specific details of the budget template. So please do reach out and we can kind of walk through the details of your particular requirements and see how that can be captured in the budget template. How many letters of support are required? Required 1. That's what's required. We do recommend 3 if you can. We do recommend that those letters of support be with organizations that you are currently working on, especially if you're working on the project that is being submitted, and they be current and relevant to the work that you're submitting for funding. If that's 1, perfect. If that's 3, great. We don't really need to see more than that. Although we love testimonials, we do prefer letters of support from organizations that you are either working with or partnered with on this particular initiative. Next question. We are an organization that helps evacuate and support Afghan women and girls, primarily here in Canada, but in the States and the UK as well. Our full budget is over 1 million, but our domestic budget for our Canadian work is under. Would we still be eligible to apply? So the question back to you, Jessica, would be the charitable number that you are applying under, whatever operating budget for that particular charitable number, that's what we would consider. If the work that you are talking about is about happening here in Canada, eligible. If it's not happening in Canada, we would have to discuss it because I don't know what you mean by evacuate and support. So we would have to discuss that. But basically, it's the charitable number that the organization is applying under. That's whose budget we would need to take a look at. So yeah, we would have to take a look at what you would be submitting in terms of your financial statement. And it would be for the organizations who has a Canadian charitable number, if that makes sense. We are an organization that is looking at potentially partnering with a local women's collective that is not a charitable organization. I don't think they have audited financial statements, and I am unsure if they have an anti-racism policy. Would they be ineligible? So if it's a local women's collective, I don't know if they have, so a couple of questions. Do they have nonprofit status to begin with? Is there a lead organization that they work with that acts as the organization that submits funding requests? If they don't have an audited financial statement, as we stated before, do they have a financial statement that is submitted to the board or the steering committee or to whoever is in charge of the funding for that collective? And if they don't have an anti-racism policy, what we have said in the past is if they indicate, if they write out a statement for us, we would accept that. Some folks have submitted their HR policy that speaks to that intention. So yeah, it depends on a series of factors. So I just would need to know how the collective is structured in order to be able to respond accurately to this question. So Daylin, if again, I would say please reach out at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org and we can talk in more detail about that. Jesse, hey, Jesse, can the funding be used toward an audit? I guess I need more information about that. To create an audited financial statement, or what type of audit? If you can post that in a little bit, I would be happy to answer that. I just don't know what you mean by that. If it's a financial audit, I can tell you that's probably not a priority for this particular funding. Okay, so again, Desi, if you can reach out with more detail, I would be happy to answer that. If an organization is applying, can the organization be a trustee for another organization? As I've stated before, you can. However, if you should both move forward, we would have to tell the nonprofit who you are serving as their fiscal or trustee that they would have to find another organization to move forward. So again, technically yes, but in order to save everybody trouble, I would recommend no. That would be my recommendation. If my organization is partnering with a nonprofit, do I need to include both parties' budgets or just my own? You would have the budget that you would include, the budget template that you would include is for the actual project seeking funding. The audited financial statements, you would have to include audited financial statements for yourself as well as your trustee. What were the names of the required, sorry, I just lost myself. What were the names of the required policies they need to be attached? So in terms of what needs to be attached, there's the anti-racism policy. You have to include the audited financial statements. I'm trying to remember quickly what else you need to include. Give me 1 second. Believe those are the only two required that I can remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it's the anti-racism policy as well as the audited financial statements. I can't, yeah, okay. Is that what you're asking, Lorraine? Is the documents that have to be attached at the end? If that is it, the only two that I think that are named are those two. The next question is, I noticed in consideration and in priorities, when you mentioned organizations, you mentioned lesbian and pan women, but not bisexual. Was that an oversight or did I mishear? I don't, that might have been an oversight, or I can't remember what I did and didn't say. Give me 1 second. Go through our notes. No, I think you misheard because it's there. So I might have, but it is, we did mention two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, and then all the others. So it is there. Okay. If our mission is to provide services to underserved women, women of low economic status, will that fall under the economic development pillar if the services provided are health related? So it depends on health related. It would not, I would say that it's not under economic development if the services provided are health related. Under the economic development pillar is meant to address unemployed and underemployed economic development, not health services. That could be considered a wraparound service of it. But if the services provided are health related, right now, initial reading without detail, I would have to say it is not, that does not fall under economic development. But again, Kiara, please do reach out at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org and we can have a separate conversation. Next question is from Shannon. Hi there. We are an organization serving Métis communities in Manitoba, but our proposal falls under under a specific gender-based violence department under this organization umbrella. The organization itself doesn't have a GBV mandate, but our department does provide GBV programming for our rural remote communities. Are we eligible for this grant? Yes, you are eligible for this grant. From Aisha, we are currently an NGO serving newcomer Muslim LGBTQ+, providing shelter, food, clothing in our facility. But what if the charity organization is not doing the same project that we are into? How does the funding work or get supported? So our recommendation always is, because we are following CRA guidelines, is the fiscal sponsor needs to be an organization that is working within the same field or is providing is within the same sector. If they're not, if they are the only game in town, we can consider it. If they worked with you on other projects and you have the relationship, we can consider it. But if they are not into the same if you are working with a fiscal sponsor, you as the program delivery organization, you're the ones who would be actually doing the project. Your fiscal sponsor would be responsible for making sure that the funds are used to support your work. If they don't work within the same sector, if you can explain to us the relationship and how that relationship works, then that is something that we can consider. But those are basically CRA guidelines for the use of an organizational partner or trustee. Is a project to create dance groups for victims of sexual assault eligible? So you would need to articulate the purpose and how that supports survivors in a very detailed and well articulated way, Amelie, to make sure that we can consider the project. So if that's the program, you would just need to articulate the reasoning, the research, all of the things that went into ensuring that this is the best use of your time and our funding. You would just have to articulate the need and why that is the way to support your clients and your group. So technically, yes, it's eligible. You would just make sure to articulate that need quite well. If our financial year ended in December 2023, we do not have our financial statement for 2023 yet. Is it okay to submit our 2022 financial statement? Yes. So it's your most current that you have available. So if your most current that you have available is 2022, we absolutely will accept that financial statement. The next question is, when you ask how many members identified like a woman, is it only the administrators or all workers? When you ask the size of the community, we are rural, is it the size of the biggest town or all the region? When you're asking about our approach about equality and diversity within a team of just, what do you mean? Okay, so how many members identified like a woman? Is it only administrators or all workers? So when it asks for an actual number, I believe that's about the board, if I can remember the application correctly. So you can speak to that. It's the leadership, I guess you say. There's a question where we ask you to speak to that, not really providing numbers, but actually talk about workers and how they reflect the community you're trying to serve. When we ask the size of the community, it's the community that is you're serving. When you consider yourself serving like the size of your community, how do you identify, what do you identify? So if it's the biggest town or the region, that depends on if that's what you define as your community. We need you to tell us that. And I don't understand the final part of the question when you're asking about approach about equality and diversity within the team of justice. What do you mean? I'm not sure I understand that question, Sonia. So if I can have you reach out to me, that would be really good to get a little more detail to be able to answer that question effectively for you. Again, if you need to speak in French to someone, it's CI Tech at canadianwomen.org versus annual grants. So if you need to speak to someone in French, I would suggest emailing citech at canadianwomen.org. Okay, the next question in French. Do the financial statements have to come from the charity partner or from us? Both. So if you're applying with a fiscal sponsor or trustee, you both have to provide your audited financial statements. Next question I have is, we are a charity. We would like to apply, but may we approach by an org to be a trustee? Can we be a trustee and a recipient directly? Again, so as I've said before, we don't recommend it for the simple reason that if both your proposals move forward, we would automatically have to tell the nonprofit that is applying with you as their trustee to find another trustee. So that leaves them in a disadvantage. And it would require them scrambling at the last minute to find another trustee. So unfortunately, our high recommendation is that you don't do that. If, however, you're in a remote area and you're kind of the only game in town, speak to us, like contact us, speak to me directly, and we can see if there's something that we can do, because we do understand that reality that in some regions, there are not a lot of organizations available to nonprofits who can serve as trustees. So please just do reach out at annualgrants at canadianwomen.org. Can you share a link for info on previous recipient projects? Melissa, Liz, or Violet, if I can get you to share the site on our website where recipients, it would be really great. We are coming up on 3 o'clock on the hour. Technically, the webinar is scheduled to go till 3:30. I've got about 13 more questions that I can see right now. Just to give them timing, I am going to say if at 3:10, we're going to cut off new questions, just so we have time to answer the ones that we've got. If you get cut off before you can add your questions, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to annualgrants at canadianwomen.org. Or if you require a response in French, please reach out at citech at canadianwomen.org. I will go until 3:30, but at 3:10, we will stop accepting new questions, and just so we can answer the rest well, okay? So I don't know if Liz, Melissa, and Violet heard me, if they can put a link to previous recipients page on from the website into the chat. I've asked them to do it, so hopefully they'll put it there so you can take a look at some of the other previous recipients and projects that we funded. Someone mentioned that it's hard to find a charitable partner, especially given lack of charities in their area. Will there be an exception? So Megan, we always work to see how we can accommodate folks, especially when they're looking at that reality. And we understand there are certain regions where there's literally only one or two organizations available to serve as trustees in their region. So we completely understand that. If that is your reality, please do reach out and we will see what we can do to accommodate and be able to support those grassroots organizations. So please do reach out. Again, annual grants at canadianwomen.org, or if you require a French response, citech@canadianwomen.org. When you say that you will give priority to organizations led by self-identifying women, would you need us to include information about staff, BOD, management to confirm the statement is true? In the application, there are questions about identifying the leadership, as well as a question that asks you about whether the staff reflects the community that it's serving. So that's where we would ask you to provide that information. Blah, blah, blah. So again, there is a qualitative question that asks about staff and if they reflect the community served. So that's where you wouldn't have to provide numbers, but you would have to talk about that. And then I think it's the board or the leadership that we do ask about who identify as women. We were operating as a grassroots group without structure supporting newcomer women escaping violence for a couple of years, but we only structured ourselves last year. How do we show our expertise and experience in this work? Speak to your previous work, speak to it, to what you have done, speak to what your work as a grassroots group, what you did, how you engaged with your community, the work that you did, projects that you were a part of. Articulate your case. Let us know about your expertise. Let us know what you did and how you came about and why you structured the way that you have now. We're always willing to take a look at it. Please just articulate who you are, how you came to be, the work that you're doing, and we will consider that. Can you send your annual charity return as an option? Celeste, if you're asking that instead of an audited statement, I'd have to throw this to Anne. Anne, can we accept an annual charity return?
I don't see how you would have an annual charity return without having audited financial statements. So maybe that would be when we'd like you to send us an email. Yeah, send us an email and explain a bit more what it is you want to do. And we'll see if it's acceptable or not.
Yeah, so Celeste, if you can just, again, send an email and just give us a little more detail, annual grants at canadianwomen.org, that would be great. So I am getting the message that, hold on one second, that the folks are not finding where to go on our website. Okay. I'm just getting the link for everybody. So if you go to Canadian Women, our work, once you're there, below you'll see areas of impact and
It looks like Violet's posted a link, Rivka.
Has she? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Can it be a project to develop professional skills? For example, to form employers in Spanish to outreach women, new workers, and offer them better services and translate documents and workshops about gender violence awareness? Yes, if you can articulate the need for that in your community and why that will help you to provide your services better, absolutely. That is something that we will take a look at. We are part of a grassroots organization that currently has been doing programming in collaboration with other organizations. We are incorporated, however, do not have financial statements as we have been operating from in-kind and personal contributions. Okay, so if you are in a collaboration, my question, Jessica, would be, is there a lead organization that kind of not manages, but that usually when we're dealing with folks who are dealing in a collaborative or a network, there's usually an organization that's considered the lead. Do they have an audited financial statement? Is that the way that you're structured? Is that how you apply? If we just need a little more detail. So again, Jessica, I would recommend reaching out at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org just to give us a little more information. But it shouldn't be a problem, but just give us an email or a call and we can talk about it, about specifics. If we don't have an anti-racism policy, can we send a harassment and discrimination policy? Yes, you can. Those have been shared by other folks. So absolutely. Would reproductive justice, abortion access, birth control access, childcare access fall under one of the three pillars? I believe that that would be considered under gender-based. Anne? I would say yes, but I don't know.
Definitely childcare we look at under both gender-based violence, but also under economic development.
Yeah.
Abortion access and birth control access, I really haven't dealt with either. And so maybe less so. We are more focused on childcare because we do try to stay out of health per se. So you would have a greater likelihood of success on childcare access, I would say.
Yeah. Again, if you can articulate the need well and why that would fall under gender-based programming, we're happy to take a look at it. Just reach out again and we can talk about that. Jennifer, our group focuses on women's heart health. Can we apply for funding to have women participate in heart health research? My response to that would be no. So research right off the bat is not something that we generally support. And heart health, again, we tend to stay away from health. It's not one of our priorities or our focuses. Anne, do you?
Yeah, again, yeah, we have generally in the past not worked on health directly. We just, you have to make your decisions on what you're going to focus on. And so we've been addressing these other gaps. So yeah, I don't think we would be stretching our funding that far, given how far it doesn't go already.
Yeah. Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
Anti-racism policy. Our HR and other program include anti-racism throughout, along with justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion statement in the preamble. Would it be acceptable to simply provide the preamble statement, or would you like the whole document to see the policy applicant of that statement? Policy application of that statement. I have had folks who have shared the whole of their HR policy binder, I guess you would call it. But if the preamble speaks to anti-racism and fully articulates it, then you could just share that. But we have had in the past folks share their entire policy package. So Carla is asking for the list of past recipients. If you check the chat, I believe Violet provided both the English and French links. It's basically the CanadianWomen.org grants/community needs. You can see it there. Can you please provide further details on the requirements for the letters of support? In requesting these letters, I want to ensure the person writing it is clear on what is needed. On letterhead, dated. Yes, so please on letterhead, please let it be dated. Please let it be from organizations that either have worked with you or support the work that you're doing. Whether they are like folks who send referrals or you send to them or they work with you on other projects. folks who are aware of the work that you are submitting this application for funding. They know the work, they know you, and can speak to that. Those are the letters of support that we're looking for. Yeah, so I hope that gives a little more detail. So it's basically on letterhead and dated, and from organizations that understand the work that you are submitting for funding. So we are a family place that works with women as well as children and families. We have single parents and families from multiple ethnic backgrounds. Does this sound like something you might help fund? Again, it depends on the program or project, excuse me, that you are submitting for funding. So yes, we have funded this type of organization before, but you would again have to articulate the need well, show us that you are working within the priority populations that we've identified. If you have a project that you are looking at to submit for funding and don't know and would rather have a conversation, please do reach out, Alyssa, to myself or at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org, and we can have a separate conversation just to see what it is that you are submitting for funding, and I can tell you if it falls within our funding priorities. Can the letter of support be from an individual or does it have to be an organization? So again, as I've said in the past, testimonials are lovely, but we do need to understand your work within the larger community and the organizations that you work with. If they are a consultant or if they are someone who works with you professionally, then we can take a look at that. But we do prefer organizations that have partnered with you or are familiar with your work. Our organization helps women obtain driver's licenses. Can we use this program to apply? Again, if you can articulate how that supports their economic development, how that supports gender-based programming, or I mean, it won't impact girls' empowerment because they can't drive. Because it's the age group is 9 to 13, so definitely not under that pillar. But if you can provide, articulate a need and articulate how that supports their economic development or supports gender-based programming, violence programming, then we can take a look at it. If you can provide me a little more detail, again, please reach out to annualgrants@canadianwomen.org. Happy to have a conversation about that. Got one more message. Oh, I just posted. It does not look like I've got any more questions. Okay, so apparently folks are struggling to find previous work. And now that I don't have any more questions, maybe I can take a quick look. But first, I would like to say thank you to all the support from Anne, Violet, Liz, and Melissa. Thank you to our interpreters for helping out today. Please, 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 if you have questions and you require assistance again. Oh, I've got one final question. Would a community volunteer group working grassroots to promote women getting involved in municipal politics be eligible? Anne?
Thanks, Rivka. Well, the pillars are gender-based violence, economic development, and girls' empowerment. So you would have to be able to describe in a very convincing way how that project, that work would support those. I'm not saying it can't be done, but you definitely have to do it because it's not as direct a connection. We know it's a good thing to support women to get elected, and we need more women elected. But usually we're supporting work that is more directly on the pillars. So it's up to you if you want to give it a try.
So I know that's clear as mud, but again, reach out. We'd be happy to
Yeah.
have a conversation. Okay, so I did find where it is on the website. So the link that we used before, canadianwomen.org, our work. So I'm going to put the link in again, just so you can see it into the chat. Sorry, just send it to everyone. So if you go to that page and you scroll down, so at the top, it'll say our work, it'll say our areas of impact, it'll say grantee programs, and nope, that's not where it is. Why can't we find this?
Perhaps it's not up at this moment.
They might have taken, yeah, because that's where it normally is. I'm so sorry, folks. Normally that is where it's usually housed. So when we send you, the link to this recording, what we will do is we will ensure to send a link as well of where you can see past recipients. And what we have funded in the past. I do apologize. This shouldn't be as hard as we are making it. But again, we will send you the link so you can take a look at oh, I think they are now just linking to our reports. So I'm going to provide you with this lovely one. This is for Out of Violence. And it's a report of our Out of Violence funding. This is our economic development one. And just going to find our girls empowerment. There we go.
Actually, looking at those might, if you have the time to look
Yes.
through those, it might give people a sense.
Yes.
Who are
That'll give you a
wondering whether,
sense, yeah.
whether they're eligible. And sometimes it's not really the eligibility. It might be that it's eligible, but we're very much focused on something
Yes.
that's a fair bit different from that. So given how many applications we get versus how many we can fund,
Exactly.
you might want to make a decision that's not worth your while.
So, we have one final question from Sarah. For empowerment programming, you'll only fund from 9 to 13 years old, so high school age wouldn't be funded. So girls empowerment, 9 to 13. However, under gender-based violence, the pillar of gender-based violence, we also do accept teen prevention work aimed at teen of all gender identifying population. So you can actually apply for it under gender-based violence programming. So for teens, that's where you would apply for that one. Okay, folks, thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. Oh, I've got one more sneaky one from Cecilia. When would services programs the center need to start if funding was awarded? My project may need a few funders. So we are always looking, we're always happy to take a look at things that uses funds to leverage other funding. Please let us know what part of the project that you are applying for. The funding is sent or is provided in July of this year, so July 2024. So the program that you are using that funding needs to be from July 2024 to June of 2025. So whatever portion of your project can be funded, can use those funds during that period. That's what you would basically apply for. So that's how that funding works. And our funding expenses can start from the date of you're approved through our board, which usually starts like a month before you get the funding, so June of 2024. But the term of your project would have to be June 2024 to June 2025. Okay, folks, we are at 3:20. Looks like I've got no more questions. If you have questions now, please don't hesitate to reach out at annualgrants@canadianwomen.org. Or if you need to converse or communicate in French, at citech@canadianwomen.org. Thank you for your attention. Good luck. And we hope to see you next year. Thanks and take care, everybody.
Thanks, Riff. Great job.